It's the 2022 World Cup. It's Morocco's players. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and I am flying solo today. We will be looking today at Morocco's squad for the 2022 World Cup. And for those following on YouTube, we run a very simple graphic where we basically list the players' names, and by that you can see the spelling of the names as we mispronounce them. It's the same broadcast for the podcast, so for the listeners, we're going to try to repeat the names a few times to help listeners familiarize themselves with those names. And actually, as a tip, podcast listeners might want to look up the YouTube video and go to the very end to get a visual of the list of players that we talk about today. So the way we do this is we go through the players and share some of the data we've collected in our files. And using that data, we try to predict how likely the player is to make the team. So we categorize them into definite, likely, possible but unlikely, and seems to be off the squad. But we have a couple of other categories like retired, injured, or new, if there happens to be a player kind of in the wings. So we will also try to determine which players are going to be starters and which ones substitutes. And that's as much as we can do at this point. But as the rosters are being published, we will do an update episode on both the team and the players. So for the players, that'll be essentially going over our predictions, updating them based on the games played to that point, any new insights we have, and revealing which players were selected for the games shortly before the Cup. So keep your eye out for these. That'll probably be in early November. Meanwhile, after we go through the players here, we'll make some comments on how the team looks going into the Cup. Again, we'll update that in November. And now for Morocco, Connor and I did a player podcast going into that Cup, and it was only about 8 months ago. So much is the same, although there are a few key changes. And we also know a little bit more, having seen which players played in the 2021 African Cup. Actually, that was in January 2022. And we know how, for example, the teams lined up and so on. All right, well, let's get into this podcast. So we're looking at Morocco. Oh, and shirt. I'm wearing a red shirt. That is Morocco's color. But I'm actually wearing a Canada shirt for a couple of reasons. A, I don't have a Morocco shirt, so hoping my family will do something to rectify that. And B, Morocco faces Canada in the World Cup here. So we're kind of hoping that a lot of these players come down with a cold or something, nothing too serious, but just something that will weaken them a little bit for the World Cup as they play Canada. Okay, those biases are out of the way. And I'm going to start with takeaways from the podcast that we did in earlier this year. So by going through that podcast, we did notice a few things. One of them was a bit of a lack of a balance in positions. I'll talk a bit more about that soon. But one of those lack of balances is kind of a shortage of defensive and central midfielders, and a bit of an overload with attacking midfielders. So we predicted that some of those attacking midfielders may be put into service in a more defensive role. Another thing we noticed is that Morocco seemed a bit stronger on the left side of the field, stronger on the left side of the field than on the right side of the field. So once again, we predicted players would be pushed over and playing kind of slightly out of position. And we're going to find out that was the case. So let us move on and take a look at formations. formation. So they played 5 games in the African Cup, and the first 2 were 4-1-4-1 formations, as was the game 5 against Egypt. That kind of seems to suit to match the fact that they have more attacking midfielders than defensive midfielders. For the game 3 and game 4 against Gabon and Malawi, they went with a 4-4-2 formation, and we see actually that in the games after the Cup, they have also seemed to settle, at least for the time being, on a 4-4-2 formation. That's what they went with in their African Cup 2023 qualifying games in June. That was at home to South Africa, and well, technically at home to away to Liberia, but for some reason that game was also played in Morocco. Both of them 4-4-2 formations. Just one more point here. Interestingly, when they played the World Cup 22 qualifying playoff game against Congo DR, they were at home there too. I was surprised to find they went with a new formation, a 5-3-2 formation, and they also played that in a friendly in the US. They tried out a few of the lesser used players in that friendly, a 5-3-2 formation. But as I said, they seem to return to a 4-4-2 formation. So again, those formations 4-1-4-1 and 4-4-2 kind of favoring more attacking midfielders. And we did notice in the African Cup pleasantly that they were a more of attacking team than they've been in the past. Part of that is down to the players they have available. They've lost a few of their defensive players, and we'll see as we go through. Okay, well, let's start going through. And we're going to start with one of the big changes, the manager position. So Vahid Halilhodžić, Connor pronounced it better, Vahid Halilhodžić, their Serbian manager, was released. I believe his contract expired after the Cup, and they didn't renew that contract. And that's going to, we'll see in this podcast, bring about a bit of change in the squad. So Halilhodžić, the poor guy, apparently this is the 3rd time he has taken a team through qualifying for a World Cup and then been released. So it also happened when he took Japan through qualifying. That was in 2018. And then took Ivory Coast through qualifying in 2010, but didn't, he didn't coach in either of those World Cups. So not sure what the problem there was, but part of it may have been that he was, seemed to have an argument with a few players, as we will see. What I did read, and I quote, is over disagreements with the Moroccan FA's president on how the team should move forward. So that's a fairly bland excuse, and we don't know the specifics, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was just not getting along with a few of the players at least. Anyway, let's get into his replacement here. So he is out. And his replacement is Walid, and I'm not sure how to say it. I'm sorry, Moroccan fans, but you just have too many vowels in your names, I must say. Regragui, Walid Regragui. I'll tell you a little bit about him. He was with the Moroccan team. He played in the 2004 and 2006 African Cups, and he was a starter in those. And his management career, now he's of course the manager of the Morocco national team. He was assistant manager in 2012 and 13, and then after that he coached a couple of the big teams in Morocco, FUS Rabat for 6 years there, and recently Wydad Casablanca, so they're 2 of the bigger teams in Morocco. And interestingly, he spent a short time with Al Duhai in Qatar, so maybe has a little bit of experience with Qatari soccer. Yeah, and I forgot to mention, I think, that he was on the national team from 2001 to 2009 with 45 caps. So he is managing the team and will take them through this World Cup. And so I'm going to put him in green, because green means kind of definite starter level. And we will definitely, well, it would be foolish for them to get rid of a manager at this point. So let's move on to goalkeepers. And we basically, for goalkeepers, have a fairly certain starter in Yassine Bounou. So I'll tell you a little bit about him. He's now with Sevilla in Spain, and he's been with the team since 2013. And he was the backup keeper for a few, his first cup in African Cup 2017 and in World Cup 2018. And he was a backup to Munir Mohand, who is still on the team, but has now become the backup himself. In other words, they've kind of exchanged positions. So for African Cup 2019 and 2021, it was Yassine Bounou started. He was born in Canada, born in Montreal, Canada, and moved to Morocco at a young age. And he's sometimes called Yassine Bono or simply Bono. And I've heard it pronounced actually Bano. So I'm not sure. I pronounce it Bounou, but I could be dead wrong there. Okay, so I've told you a little bit about him. He is the likely starter, and Munir Mohand, or sometimes called Munir Mohand Mohammadi, is the backup keeper. He was the starter in those two cups I mentioned, both of them actually coming onto the team in for the 2017 African Cup. That was their first tournament for both of those. For backup keepers, even for the African Cup, there was a little bit uncertainty about the third keeper. And I personally think it's Anas Zaniti. But he was selected for the squad, for the 2021 squad, but then he got injured with a fractured hand, and he was replaced by Ahmed Reda Tagnauti. Although Tagnauti had been a backup keeper for the World Cup 2018 and African Cup 2019, it seemed like Zaniti was kind of taking over his spot as the third keeper, but we can't be sure because of that injury. But he was replaced by Tagnauti, so that suggests to me that he was not going to be selected for the African Cup there. And those are the four basically ones to consider. And there is one kind of interesting detail that I'm going to add, and that is a young player who is with Chelsea right now, with the Chelsea youth team. So his name is Sami Tlamkani. So he's just 18 years old. He's almost certainly going to be too young to be a factor in this cup. But maybe we'll watch him as an up-and-comer. Because Bounou and Mohand are both kind of aging. They're about 30 years old, both of them. No, a little older than that, 30, 32. So they probably have a few years left in them. Zaniti is actually the same age, so they will need a keeper, let's say, in 5 years or so. Okay, so just as a review of that part, we have Yassine Bounou as the starter. I would say that's fairly certain. And Munir Mohand as the backup keeper, and then a bit of a uncertainty between Anas Zaniti and Ahmed Tagnauti. Although I give the edge there to Zaniti. He overcame his fractured hand, and he was on the bench for the last 3 games. Whereas Tagnauti was on the bench for the first 2 games since the African Cup, but when Zanetti came back, he wasn't selected. So I actually I'm actually going to move Tagnauti to possible but unlikely there. Maybe that's a bit extreme. Okay, let's move on to defenders. And wow, they have a large selection of central defenders to choose from. But there seem to be a couple of definite players in Naif Aguerd and Romain Saiz. So I'll tell you a little bit about those players. So Naif Aguerd is with West Ham in England. It just joined West Ham from Rouen in France. And his first African Cup was the 2021 African Cup recently, but he's moved into a starting role quite quickly. He scored a goal in qualifying, and he played 4 of their 5 games in the African Cup. He was the starter. And he played 4 of their 5 games. He didn't start the B team game there, and he has played 4 of their 5 games since that cup. So he looks like a fairly stalwart defender there, entrenched in his position. Romain Saiz has more experience. He has 63 caps, and he's been on the team since 2012. And he's the captain of the team of Morocco. He was with Wolverhampton in England for a long time, since 2016 to 2022. But in 2022, he moved to Besiktas in Turkey. So he's one of many French-born players on the team. And he's been a starter ever since his first tournament, the African Cup in 2017. So as I say, he will be almost certain. He's played all 5 of their games since that African Cup. So I'm going to say Saiz and Aguerd are definite and starters. And they do have many other central defenders. So I won't give details on all of them. Maybe if a couple of them emerge, we'll give a few more details when we do the update podcast. But the first one seems to be Sami Mame. And in the last podcast, I had no idea how to say his last name, because it's spelled Mmaee. You try to say it. Go ahead, try to say it. Yes, you can you? Well, I couldn't either until the African Cup, where I saw that they pronounced it Mame, Sami Mame. His brother also plays for the team. We'll get to him in a bit. He has been on the team since 2020, and he did actually start and finish game 1 in the 2021 African Cup, but then he was relegated to the bench after that. Nevertheless, he has played 4 of their 5 games since the 2021 African Cup. They tried him out in that 5-3-2 system I mentioned. But anyway, it looks fairly likely that he will be on the squad, but probably not a starter on the squad for the World Cup. So we'll put him down as a likely, but probably a substitute. And then we have a whole bunch of names that I won't give a lot of details on because they're just possible candidates who have kind of popped up a little bit, but not that much. So Jawad El Yamik, he's actually been with the team since 2016 and has 20 caps, Jawad El Yamik, but he wasn't selected for any cup since 2016. That's 3 cups. That's 4 cups. The 2017, 19, and 21 African Cups, and the World Cup in 2018. So a bit unfortunate there. He plays for Real Valladolid in Spain and was with Genoa in Italy before that. And he played 1 of their 5 games since the 2021 African Cup. Again, they kind of tried him out in that 5-3-2 system, I believe. I'll just check on that, but I'm pretty sure that's true. And he was the 3rd defender in that playoff game against Congo DR. Okay, well, I've given a lot of details on him, but I'll give less on Sofiane Chakla. So he's just been with the team since 2021, and he didn't play any of their 5 games since the recent African Cup, but he was on the bench for 3 games. Ashraf Dari is kind of a similar level. By the way, Sofiane Chakla was selected for the African Cup and came on in the B team game. So maybe a bit of a stronger candidate than Ashraf Dari, who has not been involved in a cup, and he just actually was absent from the team for a little while and just came back for the last of their 5 games since the 2021 African Cup. He wasn't selected for the 4 others, so he's a bit doubtful, but I put him as a possible because he was selected for the last game, so maybe he's coming into the squad. Another central defender is Badr Benoun. Badr Benoun, well, it looked like he was going to be selected for the African Cup in 2021 because he was actually captain of that squad. They used kind of mostly a B team, but a couple of A team players there. Yeah, he was selected for the final squad, but he had to be replaced by Ashraf Ben Charki because of a heart condition. And so we're kind of currently listing him as injured right now, but he did return from his heart condition in June 2022, but he didn't play any of the games for Morocco. So he'll probably be recovered by the time of the World Cup, but he's a bit of an outside candidate. Anyway, interestingly, though, he does play in Qatar. So we'll see. Again, we'll get more info on him if he's updated. Another player for Real Valladolid is Zuhair Fadel. Zuhair Fadel last appeared for the national team, though, in March 2021. So I really just put him here because of his club affiliations. As I said, plays for Real Valladolid, and before that, a fairly big club, Sporting Lisbon. And so I think I just thought he might be a consideration. I'm a bit surprised. He's never made it to a tournament yet. Okay, and just a bit of history. I'm going to tell you about the retired Mehdi Benatia. So he was on the team since 2008, and he retired in 2019. He was actually the captain. So a bit of a loss for them there in central defense, which is maybe why Nayef Aguerd kind of came in quickly to replace him, because he had been a standard in all of the African Cups since 2012. So farewell to Mehdi Benati. He actually played for big teams like Juventus and Bayern Munich and Roma, and left a bit of a gap in the defense. So we'll just go through one more time central defenders. So it looks like Romain Saiss and Nayef Aguerd will be the starters. Sami Mame will likely be selected, but will probably be a substitute. And then we have a few players. They usually bring about 5 or 6 central defenders, so some of these players should be there. Jawad El Yamik, probably the most likely. Sofiane Chakla, Ashraf Dari, and Badr Benoun. So probably a couple of those players at least. But not Zuhair Fadel, who seems to be off the squad, and of course not Mehdi Benatia, who is retired from the team now. Okay, that is central defenders. So sometimes we have a category kind of versatile defenders, but there were none for Morocco. So we'll move on to left backs. Now they are quite strong on the left side. And but the stalwart there is, even though he's quite young, Achraf Hakimi has been occupying that position, kind of sole possession of that position. So he is a big player for them. He plays for Paris Saint-Germain right now and was with Inter Milan and Real Madrid before that, and were loaned to Borussia Dortmund. Just a fantastic resume here. He was actually born in Spain, and he's been with the team since 2016, and his first cup was the World Cup in 2008, when he immediately moved into a starting position. And though he is just 26 years old, sorry, I don't actually have the ages, I just have the year of birth, so I'm calculating it. But yeah, 23 years old, 23 to 24 years old. He seems like a veteran. He has 51 caps and 8 goals. A very important player for them because he's a specialist in free kicks as well. So even though he's a defender, he has 8 goals. So as far as the national team goes, he's been a starter since the 2018 World Cup, and he scored 2 goals in qualifying. One of them was in that final playoff against Congo DR, and of course he played all 5 of the games since the African Cup. So he is a real fixture there. That doesn't leave much room for Adam Massani, but now we refer back to the conversation we had, or to the podcast we did before, because Adam Massani is also a starter. Before the Cup, he had played 7 of their 10 games in the lead up to the Cup, so we were a bit confused. But we also noticed that they were weaker on the right side. So Adam Massani, though he's coded as a left-handed defender, he's been playing as a right back pretty consistently, including 4 of their 5 games since the 2021 African Cup in January, and he was starting all 5 games in that position there too. He's with Udinese, and he moved there from Watford. I think those teams, in fact, I know those teams have a bit of an agreement among them. They have the same owners, so they kind of freely move around amongst them. Watford from 2018 to 2022, and recently moved to Udinese in Italy. So though he earned his first cap in 2021, he's become a fixture on the team, but not as a left back. I'll kind of grey that out there as a left back, but I'll put him as the definite right back. Or almost definite, because they do have a couple of right backs coming in. Just a couple of other names to mention here. Abdel Karim Badi, I believe he played in the Arab Cup. I'm not dead sure. Anyway, his name has kind of popped up, but I would say he's not on the squad. He was on in the 2019 African Cup. He was on the bench but didn't get any game time, and then he wasn't selected for 2020. So he played his last game in 2021 on the bench in February 2021. So seems to be off the team. Okay, next is Soufiane El Karouani. We also have him as seemingly off the squad. He last appeared for the national team in the 2021 African Cup, actually, but he was on the roster and on the bench for the first game, and then disappeared. Wasn't even on the bench after that. So, and he hasn't played any games, any of their 5 games since there. So he never kind of really got onto the squad. He only has 3 caps and hasn't been playing recently. So maybe he'll pop back in, but we kind of doubt it. But one player who does seem to be coming in, and he was used in those 5 games, is, I'm going to put him as possible, but he may be even a little bit higher than that, is Yahya Atiat Allah. Yahya Atiat Allah. And oh my goodness, I have misplaced my information. about him. But suffice to say, though, that he was tried out in one of those games. I believe it was the game against Liberia. He played as a left back, so they moved Hakimi over to the right. Because it was against Liberia, they seem to be trying a few of the secondary players. But again, he'll have a tough time as a left back because he's got pretty stiff competition ahead of him. And finally, just a name to throw out, Ashraf Lazar. So again, he seems to be off the squad, having last played in June 2021. And he's never actually made it to a cup, despite having 19 caps. And he was with Portimonense in Portugal, but now he's unattached. So I wonder what's happening with him. So just a review on the left backs. We have Ashraf Hakimi as a definite. He will be a starter. And we have Adam Massini, who's also coded as a left back, but playing on the right. And he seems to have nailed down that position. We'll look at right defenders soon, but they seem to have strong left backs and not many right backs. Right backs who are strong candidates. All right, just give me a moment here. All right, I had to cough. Okay, moving to the right back position. The best thing we have there is a likely candidate. And likely because he played two of their games since the 2021 African Cup in January, and he was on the bench for three others. So they seem to be keeping him in the wings. He's just joined the team in 2021 and only has 4 caps. He was selected for the 2021 African Cup, but he didn't see any action in that cup. He plays for Metz in France and is 23 years old. So we have him as a likely candidate. Now, an interesting candidate too is Nusser Mazraoui. And I'm going to put him as a possible, but it's a bit of an interesting story. He was one of the players who had a falling out with manager Haladozic. And so he wasn't selected for the 2021 African Cup. He had been on a bench player for the 2019 African Cup, making a couple of appearances as a sub. And he has 12 caps for the team. But recently he made a move from Ajax in the Netherlands to Bayern Munich. So Bayern Munich is a pretty major club. That's a big move in his career. So it's hard to imagine that the new manager is not going to turn an eye to him as a consideration. He last played for the national team in November 2020, but his move to Bayern Munich in July of 2022 has got to make him a consideration. So it'll be interesting to see whether he is selected for the team in the upcoming months. And we'll give an update on that. But right now we just have him as a possible player. And then a couple of players who are seem to be off the team. So we'll just kind of mention them by name. Is Issam Chebake or Issam Chebak. And he's been with the team since 2016, but only has 8 caps and last appeared in March 2021, so not a likely candidate there. Another one is Ayoub El Amloud. He just has 1 cap in 2021, but he wasn't a consideration for the African Cup because he was out with a fractured ankle. So he last appeared in October 2021, and that fractured ankle continued as an injury preventing him from playing through the Arab Cup in December 2021 and, of course, the African Cup in January 2022. So he recovered by March, but he wasn't selected for any of their games since that time. But he's only 20 well, he's 28 years old, so still a candidate. And I suppose it'll depend on maybe his performance at the club level, whether he makes it. Another player seemingly off the team, I'm actually going to put, even though he's recovered, I'm going to put El Amloud as injured, because he may make his way back into the team. Now, this one is a veteran who has retired, so this is why they have still a bit of a problem filling the right back position with a right back player. Nabil Dirar retired from the team in 2019. He's still playing at the club level, so he's with Kasimpasa in Turkey and was with Fenerbahce before that, and Monaco before that. So a big player for them. Last appeared in November 2019, and he was a starter in the 2017 and 2019 African Cups, and he missed the first game of the World Cup 2018, but became a starter after that. So 48 caps and 3 goals, but he is about 36 years old now, so he is retired from international soccer. So that is kind of the story of the right backs. No kind of major candidates after losing Nabil Dirar. So left back Adam Massani has moved over to the position and pretty much owned it. But we do have, I'm not going to say Massani is going to be a starter, because Sofiane Alakouch, who we considered likely, and Nusayr Mazraoui, who has moved to Bayern Munich and might become a candidate, might challenge him for the position. So we'll put him down as kind of a substitute level. Although, as it is, he's probably, as of right now, he's the starter. Okay, we move now to the midfield. I'm just going to clean up my graphics on the YouTube podcast here, just to make it clean for the end. Now, we do have a category of general or versatile midfielders, and Morocco did have one in Younes Belhandi. However, Younes Belhandi is also retired from the team, so they've lost a few big players. However, most of these players were lost before the African Cup. They were lost after the last World Cup, but before the 2021 African Cup. So they have played in a competition without these players. So the loss is a little less big considering that. But Younes Belhandi last appeared in the 2019 African Cup, and he was a starter in the 2012 African Cup, but then kind of disappeared from the team. He was a sub in 2013 and injured in 2017, but then basically a starter in the World Cup and African Cup 2019. So 58 caps and 5 goals. He's actually only 32 years old and is still playing in Turkey at the club level, but seems to have retired from the national team. So that's a bit of a loss. We move on to defensive midfielders, and we said they're a little short on defensive and central midfielders too. So we only have a candidate at the possible level, and then one who seems to be off the squad. So the possible candidate is Yaya Jabrain, and he plays in Morocco for one of their bigger clubs, Wydad Casablanca. He's been with the team since 2018 and has 16 caps and 2 goals, but he's never made a tournament before. And yes, he played the last of their 5 games since the African Cup in January, and was on the bench for one, but not selected for 3 others. So just a possible candidate there. And then Youssef Ait Benasser seems to be off the squad. So Youssef Ait Benasser last appeared for the national team in September 2019. And he played for Monaco in the French league for 5 years, and now he's with Adanaspor in Turkey. But he's only 26 or 27 years old too, so a bit young to be off the team. Although he never really secured a position. He was in the 2017 and 19 African Cups and in the 2018 World Cup, but he was only a starter in 2019. But after the first game, he lost his starting position. So has never really secured a place in the squad, 24 caps. But he is young enough to come back into the team. So we'll kind of keep an eye on whether he shows up for any of the games in the upcoming months. But that's all we have for defensive midfielders. And as we said, they're much stronger in the attacking midfield area. But they do have a fairly stalwart central midfielder in Amrabat. Sofian Amrabat. Sofian Amrabat. So he's been with the team since 2017, and he has 36 caps. He's with Fiorentina in Italy and has been playing for fairly solid clubs like Feyenoord in the Netherlands and Club Brugge in Belgium. And he didn't make it to the 2019 African Cup. However, he was a bench player in the 2018 World Cup. He actually came on as a substitute, replacing his brother, Nordin Amrabat. But he actually made a tackle in a game against Iran that gave away a free kick and led to Iran's winning goal in injury time. So I don't imagine, maybe that's why he was left off the team in 2019. But I like him, and they seem to too, because in 2021, recently, he was a sub in game one, but then gained a starting position for the remaining 4 games. And since that African Cup, he's played 4 of their 5 games. So again, a bit of a lack of central midfielders. So now he seems to have nailed down a position in the central midfield. I'm actually going to put him as a definite, as much because they kind of lack other players, other candidates to fill the position. Also as a definite, maybe not a central midfielder, but Azzedine Ounahi. And even though he's coded as a central midfielder, they've been using him I believe, on the right side of the pitch. I think a couple of times he's played on the left. But anyway, he's a left or right, kind of pressed into service as a left or right midfielder. And he's just been with the team since 2021. But he was selected for the African Cup, and he started a couple of games, but he wasn't what we'd call a starter. He's only 22 years old, and he plays for Angers in France. And he scored 2 of the 25 goals in qualifying, both of them in a 4-1 win over Congo DR in the final playoff there. So that probably put him in a few good books, and he's played 4 of their 5 games since the African Cup. So actually, even though he's not playing central midfield, seems to be carving out a starting position in the team there, despite his youth. So I'm going to put him as green, but in fact not playing as a central midfielder, but an outside midfielder. The next candidate is Imran Louza. So Imran Louza we have as a possible. I know Connor likes him. He's been following him at Watford, with the team he plays for, his club team. He was with Nantes in France before that. He's also a player that has been with the team just since 2021, and he has 10 caps and 2 goals in that time, and was a starter in the 2021 African Cup in January. And He scored 2 of their goals in qualifying. One of them was on a penalty, but he only played the first of their 5 games since that time, since that African Cup in January. And he was on the bench for 1, but not selected for 3 others. So we thought he would be a more regular starter. If I go back to the podcast that we did last time, I think we had him as a definite. Yeah, we had him as a definite. And the reason we had said that was because he had basically just started with the team in 2021, but he played 5 of their games, all for the I'm getting lost in my words here. Before the African Cup, he played the 5 games before, so he seemed to come in and get a lot of games right away. So we thought he'd be a definite there. Now we put him as a possible because he hasn't been playing for the team that much. So we'll see if he makes the team. Meanwhile, we have a couple of other players. Walid El Karti. He's been with the team since 2014, but in that time has only played 21 games, so hasn't really carved out a place for himself on the squad, has never made a tournament, and he last appeared in the Arab Cup, so maybe one of those kind of B team players that just can't make it on to the A team. But we'll talk more about him if he actually makes it. And we have another big retired player here. Again, in 2019, he retired, so they did play the African Cup without him. But it's Mbark Boussoufa. So a real veteran with 70 caps and 8 goals, 38 years old now, so too old for the squad. His first African Cup was in 2012, and he was named to the team of the tournament in 2017 and was a starter for the 2018 World Cup and 2019 African Cup. So especially considering their lack of central midfielders, he's kind of a big miss there. And he last played in that 2019 African Cup. So a bit of a hole to fill there, and it seems like Sofiane Amrabat is filling that hole. Okay, we move over to the left of the midfield, and we only have one candidate here. It's well, we do have left wingers, but coded as left midfielders, we have Amin Harit, and he's only at the possible level. Been with the team since 2017 and has 14 caps. He plays for Schalke in Germany, but he was born in France, and I have it in the soccer files here that he's a good swimmer. I doubt that'll come into play. He was in the 2018 World Cup. He started actually, but he lost his starting position in that cup and didn't play any games after that. Then he wasn't selected in 2019 and 2021. But he actually returned to the team after a year and a half absence in June 22 and went on to play the last of their 3 games, the last 3 of their 5 games. So maybe making his way back onto the team. Now they did have him as a left midfielder, and they need someone in that position because they again Unahi, who we talked about earlier as a central midfielder, has been playing there, and basically out of position players. So he'll be hoping to fill that position, but we just have him as a possible, and if he makes it, we put him at the substitute level, I would imagine. Okay, over to the right side of the midfielder, they have a couple of choices there, but again, not much in terms of right midfielders. And I guess the difference between a right or left midfielder and a right or left winger would be the wingers would tend to be more attacking. Anyway, that's the way I have it in my head. So I think of these as kind of more defensive-minded midfield players. And we only have one candidate at the possible level here too, and that's Mohamed Chibi. So Mohamed Chibi has been with the team since 2021 and has 5 caps and 1 goal. And he was on the roster for the 2021 African Cup in January 2022, but he didn't see any action in that cup. And he hasn't played any of their 5 games since, but he was on the bench for the last of those. So maybe like Amin Harit, maybe making his way back into the squad. We do have one retired player here, and that's Nordin Amrabat. He also retired in 2019 after having played 64 caps for the national team with 7 goals. He's still active at the club level, playing with AEK Athens, and in the past, he also played with Watford and Galatasaray and PSV Eindhoven. So he's 9 years older than his brother, actually, Sofiane. So that can be a bit confusing because usually brothers kind of go hand in hand as far as retirement and stuff like that goes. But he's retiring well before, or he retired well before his brother. So he was on the squad for the 2012 African Cup, and he was basically a starter in all tournaments except 2017, where he was for fear of an injury is what I have in my notes. So I'm not dead sure what that means. Anyway, he missed that cup, and the last one he played for was in 2019 African Cup. He did play actually in November 2019 up to that point, but was retired by the time 2021 came around. Okay, so again, very slim in midfielders. And we can't really say with much confidence that left midfielder Amin Harit and right midfielder Mohamed Chibi will be on the team. Even possible is a bit generous because they just came in right at the end there. But in their favor is the fact that they need players in those positions. Okay, we move on to left wingers, and we start with Tarek Tissoudali. Tarek Tissoudali. Now, even though he's coded as a left winger, he's been playing as a forward, but he's been playing quite regularly. So we have him as a definite, and I wouldn't say necessarily as a starter, and I'll tell you why shortly. Because anyway, I'll give you a little information on him. He's just been with the team since 2022. He played in the African Cup 2021 African Cup, but that took place in 2022. So he was new to the squad, actually. He was named to the squad before ever getting a cap for the national team. And he seemed... no, I won't go into detail on that. Anyway, he scored 2 of their goals in 2022 qualifying, so continued on after the African Cup. That was one in each of their final round games against Congo DR. So, that must have looked good on his resume, and he seems to have been getting more starts after that. He was just a sub in the 2021 African Cup. So by now he has 9 caps and 2 goals. He plays for Ghent in Belgium, and he was born in the Netherlands. But he looks like he's really making inroads into the team, though not as a left winger. So I'm going to gray him out as a left winger here, and I'm going to put him as a forward because that's where he's been playing. And I'll put him as a likely because he does have a bit of competition on the forward line, even though he's been playing a lot. Okay, we have 2 possible candidates on the left wing here, and one of them is Zakaria Abukal. Zakaria Abukal has been with the team since 2020 and has 11 caps and 2 goals. He's just 21 or 22 years old. He was born in the Netherlands, and he actually changed his nationality to Moroccan. I'm guessing that's through parentage there. And he started in the 2021 African Cup last January, but he also was subbed out of the first game and lost his starting position, got a couple of substitute appearances after that. So I would say he's a possible candidate here, because like the midfielders we talked about, he only played the last of their 5 games since the African Cup, although he was on the bench for 2 of them and not selected for 2. So it did actually look like they were kind of trying him out for a while, but I'm not sure he's really securing a position for himself. The other possible candidate we have is Soufiane Rahimi. Well, Soufiane Rahimi has been with the team since 2021, and he has 16 caps, but get this, 6 goals, so that's a good percentage of goal scoring there, above 33%, around 40%. But it didn't earn him a starting position in the 2021 African Cup. He was just a sub there, and he's played 2 of their 5 games since the African Cup and was on the bench for 1 other. So he seems like a fairly solid candidate. He plays for Al Ain in the UAE, and he played for Raja Casablanca before that. Okay, now we're going to move on to an interesting candidate here. I have him down as possible but unlikely. His name is Abdi Izal Zuli, but that's difficult to pronounce, so I've seen the name given as Ez Abdi, we'll have to find out. Ez Abdi. Maybe that's what he's called in Spain, because he is in Spain, and he's with the Barcelona B team in Spain. I have a note that he's with Barcelona since 2021 and was with, but I don't think he's played for the senior Barcelona team. Anyway, it seems like Morocco and Spain are kind of wrangling over him. He's 21 years old, and I don't think he's decided which team he's going to go with too. So both are kind of wooing him. But if he joins the team, he may be kind of one of the up-and-comers to keep an eye on. Also possible but unlikely is Abdelila Hafidi. Abdelila Hafidi has 25 caps since 2013, but the only tournament he has ever participated in was in 2013, although he did play in the 2021 Arab Cup. So there is a chance, because he's played 25 games for Morocco, a chance that he'll come in. Less of a chance, who I have as off the squad, is Ismail El Haddad. So he has 21 caps since 2016, has never made a tournament, even though he's been with the team since 2016, and again played in the Arab Cup, but doesn't look like a likely candidate here for this World Cup. Now we move on to right wingers, and we have Hakim Ziyech. So Hakim Ziyech is fairly well known as a Chelsea player, but for Morocco right now I just have him down as possible, and that's better than it was in 2021, where it was basically known that he was not going to play with the team. That was because of an ongoing dispute with the manager, Holodozic. Oh my God, I'm probably butchering his name. Anyway, an ongoing disagreement with the manager. But now that they have a new manager in, I'm guessing they will at least consider him. And who knows, maybe that's what, a big star like that, not playing for the team, maybe that's what the problem with the previous manager was about, although I'm not saying that with any confidence. Anyway, Hakim Ziyech has played with the team since 2015, and he has 40 caps and 17 goals. That is a really good record there. I think that's above 40%. And he's with Chelsea in England and was with Ajax in Netherlands before that. And he was born in the Netherlands, in fact. And he was on the team for the 2018 World Cup and for the 2019 African Cup, but not the 2021 African Cup due to his disagreement with the manager. So I'm sure a lot of Moroccan fans will be hoping to get him back for the Cup. But right now I just have him as a possible candidate because he hasn't, well, they've played 5 games since the African Cup in January. The last of those was in June, and the manager was dismissed in August. So all eyes on Hakim Ziyech to see if he comes back into the squad. He's their only candidate as a right midfield, as a right winger. So that brings us on to the attack. We include attacking midfielders in the forward line, and we have a whole bunch of them. So again, they were a bit lacking in defensive midfielders, but a bit overweight in attacking midfielders. So we have just one candidate who seems a definite, and that is Salim Emala. Salim Emala has 22 caps and 4 goals since 2019. He's 26 years old, and he plays for Standard Liège in Belgium. He's played in Belgium throughout his career. He was born in Belgium, and he was a starter in the 2021 African Cup. He scored 2 goals in 2022 World Cup qualifying. Actually, both of them were in a 5-0 win over Guinea, and he's played all 5 of their games since the African Cup. So he seems a starter in the attacking midfield. I'm just going to check whether he has played as an attacking midfielder in all of those games. Yeah, pretty much kind of a central attacking midfielder in that 4-1-4-1 formation. And in the 4-4-2 formation as well. So he is playing in position. Salim Emala, a definite candidate and probably a starter. Next one is Ilias Chair. Ilias Chair plays for Queen's Park Rangers in England. He's been with the team since 2021 and has 9 caps. He's 25 years old. We have him as a likely candidate. A likely candidate, although he only appeared in the B team game in the 2021 African Cup in January. And actually, I should move him down to possible because he's only played one of their 5 games since, although he was on the bench for 3 other games. So I'm actually going to change him to a possible. Again, he's a player we thought would make bigger inroads into the team. If I look back at the previous podcast we did, what did we have him as? Yeah, we had him as a likely candidate there, but he seems to have fallen off a little bit. And he played 7 of their 8 games after his first cap prior to the 2021 African Cup. So he looked like a strong candidate, but now he doesn't seem to be getting as much field time. So we've put him as a possible. Next one is Eamon Barcock. Eamon Barcock, we also have as a possible, and he's been with the team since 2020 with 18 caps. He's just 24 years old, and he plays for Mainz in Germany. He was in fact born in Germany and has played there his whole life with Eintracht Frankfurt for 6 years before recently moving to Mainz. And he was also in the 2021 African Cup, but only as a substitute. only as a substitute there. And he has scored one of the qualifying goals for this cup, but he's only played one of their games since the African Cup, and was on the bench for one other and not selected for three. So that's why we have him just as a possible candidate. Next is Adel Taarabt. We talked about him a lot in the previous podcast because Connor knows him quite well from the champion. He has a funny story about him in the previous podcast, actually. Connor knows him quite well because he played for QPR in England, and that manager went on to coach Cardiff. So Connor's quite familiar with him. He's in Benfica in Portugal, and he has been for a long time now. He was a very promising player in the English league, very promising players all over the world. He was loaned to AC Milan and loaned to Tottenham. But he never really lived up to his promise, and it seems the same with Morocco. The only tournament, he's been with the team since 2009, so he's about 33 years old, and he was in the 2012 African Cup as a substitute, but otherwise not in any tournaments. So despite his great talent, he hasn't really lived up to his potential, and yet they seem to kind of keep trying him out. So he played 4 of the games in the lead up to the 2021 African Cup. So we were kind of hoping to see him on the squad, but he didn't make it. And now they've used him for 1 of the 5 games since the African Cup. Again, they seem to be hoping to get the best out of him, I suppose. So Adel Taarabt, a possible candidate there. And actually a likely candidate as an attacking midfielder, even though he seems to play on the left, is Sofiane Boufal. Sofiane Boufal scored 1 of their goals in qualifying and played the first 2 of their games after the African Cup, but has been out for 3 games with a dead leg. So I imagine that will be, he'll overcome that by the time the World Cup comes around. He's been with the team since 2016, but had trouble getting on the squad. He was nominated to the 2017 African Cup squad, but then was replaced. And in my notes, it says for unknown reasons. And he wasn't selected for the World Cup, and then was just a sub in the 2019 African Cup, and finally got a starting position for 2021, where he played on the left side. Again, so many attacking midfielders, and a bit weak in terms of candidates on the side of the field. But he does seem to have nailed down a position there on the side, but we'll see whether this injury let somebody else into the position. So we just have him as an injured, but I think if he's fit, we would see him as a likely candidate, and I think he'll overcome that problem. So just in review for attacking midfielders, we have Salim Amala as a definite, and we have Elias Chair, Eamon Barcock, and Adel Taarabt as possible. And we have Sofiane Boufal as injured but likely, though likely on the left side. Okay, we have a category for secondary strikers, but there are none coded as secondary strikers, so we're going to move on to forwards. And really, we have basically 3 candidates. I'm going to put them all as definite. No, wait. I'm going to put Ayoub Al-Kabi and Youssef En-Nesyri as definite, and Tariq Toussoudali as likely, although the 3 seem to share the role, and Al-Kabi seems to be kind of the number 1 there, but we'll give a bit of information about him. Al-Kabi has been with the team since 2018, and he has 36 caps and 20 goals, so that's over 50%. He plays for Hatayspor in Turkey and was with Wydad Casablanca before that, and interestingly with Hebei China Fortune in China before that. And he was on the World Cup 2018 squad, where he started game one, but then lost his starting position, and he was not selected for the African Cup in 2019. In 2021, so we were considering him, excuse me, a likely candidate for the 2021 World Cup, but and we were right in as far as he was on the bench for game one, but he gained a starting position for games 2 and 3, and has done well since. So he scored 5 of their 25 goals in qualifying, and he was their top scorer, and he played all 5 of their games since the African Cup. So really seems to have nailed the position down there. Okay, along with him is Youssef En-Nesyri, who we also consider a definite candidate, and he has been with the team since 2016, has 48 caps and 14 goals, and he's 24 or 25 years old. He's with Sevilla in Spain now, and he's played his whole career in Spain, well, at least since being on a youth club in Spain. He was born in Morocco and played his young years in Morocco, but quickly moved to Spain. So he's been a consideration since the 2017 African Cup, where he was subbed into the first couple of games and then earned a starting position. But he wasn't a starter in 2018 World Cup. He actually appeared only in game 3. But he was a starter for the 2019 African Cup, and technically for the 2021 African Cup, even though he wasn't on the bench for game 1 because he was under a COVID quarantine. And he's played 4 of their 5 games since that African Cup last January, and so seems a definite candidate for this cup. Now, we talked about Tarek Toussoudali, who was coded as a left winger, but has actually been kind of sharing the forward spots with these guys. But we won't cover that again. We'll instead move on to another likely candidate in Munir El Haddadi. So Munir El Haddadi is with Sevilla in Spain, and he was with Barcelona for 5 years before that, although he tended to be loaned out for some of his time there. So he grew up through the Barcelona youth system and was born in Spain, in fact. He's been on the team since 2021 and has 12 caps and 2 goals. But he was only a sub in the 2021 African Cup last January. And he's played none of their games since that time, but he has been on the bench for 3 of them. So definitely a kind of a substitute player. It looks like he'll be selected, but he'll be a substitute. I'm going to kind of nominate, well, I'll come and do that later. I was going to go over starters and substitutes, but I see we have a couple of other players to talk about. And one of them I got as a likely player in Faisal Fajar, or maybe it's Faisal Fajar. He's a bit older, about 33, maybe moving on to 34 there, but has been with the team since 2015 and has 51 caps. But all through his tournament career, he's been a sub, although sometimes he started as a sub. No, only in 2017 did he start as a sub and then gain a starting position. So a fairly regular selection for the team, but doesn't seem to be a starter. Has never seemed to be a starter, and he's coded as a forward / attacking midfielder here. But the only position he's played recently is, I believe it's on the left wing, but I'm just going to look it over. here. Oh, okay. He must have, yeah, he must have been a substitute in 3 of the 4 games he played. And I have him kind of as a central, maybe a central attacking midfielder in the 1 game that he started. So kind of a substitute all the way, Faisal Fajr. And he's 33 years old. So I wonder if I should move him down to just a possible level. In fact, I think I will. Okay, and then we have a couple of other kind of names at the possible but unlikely. So one of them is Walid Azaru. Walid Azaru has been with the team since 2017 and has 12 caps, but he's never appeared in a tournament, and he last appeared in the 2021 Arab Cup, so not a likely candidate there. He plays for Ajman in the UAE. A bit more likely, perhaps, is Ashraf Ben Charki. He was selected for the 2021 African Cup, but he was just a replacement for an injured player, and he didn't see any action on the squad there on the field. And he also, like, he played 5 of their 10 games in the lead up to the 2021 African Cup, but it was only for a total of 35 minutes. So if he makes it at all, he's definitely substitute material. But really, yeah, his last appearance was in the 2021 Arab Cup, because even though he was on the roster in the 2021 African Cup, he didn't appear even on the bench for any of the 5 games. So not a likely candidate. Also not, well, I have him as not likely, is Ryan Mamey. That's the brother of the defender Sami Mamey, who we talked about earlier. And we would have him as a likely candidate, except that he's injured, and it's an ankle injury just for the last 3 of the games in June there. So it may be that he's recovered for the African Cup. If it's something like a broken ankle, then that may be in a bit of doubt. But anyway, he has been with the team since 2016, but has only amassed 11 caps in that time. 4 goals is pretty impressive given the 11 caps. But he was a bench player for the 2021 African Cup. He scored 4 of their goals in qualifying, so was their second top scorer. He also missed a penalty in the final round playoff game, although it didn't end up doing them damage. So it's a bit hard to know what his position with the squad is right now. It seems like they're interested in bringing him, but it would be at more as a substitute. Okay, and then one player who seems to be off the squad is Usama Idrissa. So he also plays for Sevilla in Spain, but he's on loan with Feyenoord in the Netherlands right now. And he also was in the 2019 African Cup as a substitute, but didn't make the team in 2021. So he last appeared in November 2019. So pretty much seems to be out of the picture. So I'll give a quick review of the forwards here. And we would say Ayub El Kabi and Youssef En-Nesyri are definites for making the team, and probably for starting too. And Tariq Tissoudali is kind of halfway between a starter and a substitute. We'll put him as a substitute here, but he, along with Munir El Haddadi, are likely to make the team. And then we have Faisal Fajr as a possible candidate. Possible but unlikely are Walid Azaru and Ashraf Bencharki. But sorry, I should put him in the injured category. Ryan May. He's a more likely candidate if he's fit. We'll have to see. And then Usama Idrisi seems to be off the squad. So that's the end of the player-by-player section. We'll go back to some of the takeaways again to kind of repeat. Now we can put names to some of these positions. I didn't want to do that at the beginning because I thought it would be a bit confusing, but we talked about a lack of balance in positions. So some positions like left defense or attacking midfield, they have too many players in those positions. And in other positions, maybe not right defense now, but perhaps, but definitely in defensive and central midfielders and on the wings, left and right. I should say left and right midfielders, more defense-minded midfielders. They're a bit short, so they're likely to move players as they did in the 2021 African Cup, move players into positions that they don't normally start in. That's the takeaway from that. And then in terms of specifics, we saw that left back Adam Messina has been playing as a right back for quite a while. Sofiane Amrabat is a pretty established central or defensive midfielder, but they seem to kind of mix and match in terms of adding players to that midfield. So they tried out central defender Sami Mamé in the role of a stopper, and he was only the stopper in one of the 3 games where they tried that formation. They moved attacking midfielder Ilias Chair and Salim Amala into kind of a central midfield role too. In terms of the wings, they have attacking midfielder Sofiane Boufal. He held down the left midfield position there for a while at least, and the right midfield position in the African Cup, so virtually a different player every game. So Unahi played that position twice, and then they tried Tissou Dali there. He's a left winger, but they put him over to right midfielder. They tried Louza, who's a central midfielder, over there, and they tried forward Munir El Haddadi, all taking a crack at that right midfield role. But now that there's Hakim Ziyech might be coming back, even though he's more of an attacking right midfielder, he is on the right. So I would imagine he would be in that position. But if they do put him in that position, they will have to maybe enlist some more defensive midfielders. And then for forwards, they were rotated at first with left winger Zakaria Abukal starting as a lone forward in game 1 of the African Cup, which took me by surprise. But then it seemed like Ayoub El Kabi, who we had actually predicted as a substitute, came in and nailed down the position. And Youssef En-Nesyri, who I think was injured at the beginning of the African Cup or recovering from an injury, also came into play. And since then, Tissou Dali has been kind of vying with En-Nesyri for that position. But we'll see. We need a bit more on that. Okay, so that is a review of the takeaway from the previous podcast, and we're just going to do a couple of things to think about what Morocco looks like coming into this cup. So in terms of club affiliations, wow, they're actually quite impressive. Most of their players playing at least for second tier clubs, and I'm talking about names like Udinese, Fiorentina, West Ham. I hope I'm not insulting people by calling these second tier clubs, but solid clubs, Benfica, Zamalek in Egypt, maybe actually not that many players from the clubs in Morocco, but there is Anna Zaniti, the goalkeeper, plays for Raja Casablanca, and another with Wydad, a couple of players with Wydad Casablanca. I would say for the most part, fairly solid second tier teams. But we're going to highlight a couple of players' club affiliation here, because we have Ashraf Hakimi, who plays for the elite club Paris Saint-Germain. And then the player who was not selected because of discord with the manager, Nusser Mazraoui, plays for Bayern Munich, or recently moved to Bayern Munich. So I'm sure the new manager will give him a look. Sevilla is kind of in that category of like solid second tier teams, but maybe arguably a top tier team, however you want to make of it. I'm highlighting them here because these guys have 3 players. I thought it was more than that, but anyway, on my list here is 3. Yassine Bounou, Youssef El Nesri, the forward, and Munir Al Haddadi, the forward also, all playing for Sevilla. And then a couple of young players to keep an eye on. One of them is Abdi Ezal Zuli, who may be going by a different name, maybe just Abdi. Anyway, he's with Barcelona B, and Spain and Morocco are kind of fighting for his services. And then we have the goalkeeper I mentioned, Sami Klemkani, with Chelsea, but he's one kind of for the future, probably won't make inroads in this World Cup. They already have they already have a bit of a struggle in terms of selecting goalkeepers. Okay, and finally, we'll look at the age and experience of the team. So I have basically made up my own list here of kind of, I would say, the definite, likely, and possible players for the most part. So this is a bit of a rough estimate, but I've listed 33 players among the ones I've chosen today, not the ones who just play a game here and there. And I've come up with the average age of 25.8. So that is actually quite good. Like, that's the prime of players' career. They only have a couple of players in their 30s. We mentioned Faisal Fajr, who is in his 30s. A couple of the goalies too, we noted, are in their 30s. So Bounou and what's his name? Sorry, Munir Mohand, both of them in their 30s, but that's okay for a goalie, and that's about it. Jawad Ali Amik is 32, and Roman Saiz is the other one, kind of maybe approaching retirement age. But a lot of the bigger names that we've talked about are in their mid-20s, so a very good age for the team. I would say they have a couple of tournaments left in them with basically the same group of players. So looking good on the age front. In terms of caps, the average number of caps is 19. So I don't know what to make of that. Maybe a bit inexperienced. Again, Faisal Fajr is the one with the most caps at 51. Those 2 goalies, I got confused because they have Munir Mohand as Munir Al Kajwi, that he sometimes goes by that name. Anyway, it doesn't matter. They both have 43, and actually the player with the most caps is Captain Roman Saiz. So all of those players, being older, have more caps. The rest have basically around 20 or less, apart from some players who have played a lot, like Ashraf Hakimi. So maybe slightly lacking in experience. Youssef El Nesri has 48. And the next after that, I think, is Sofian Amrabat with 36. So not that experienced, but
perhaps it doesn't matter that much. And just for fun, the total number of goals among these 35 players is 68. So that's actually a little bit low. But I know that they were a highly defensive team up until the 2019, I think, African Cup. And they looked a bit more attacking in 2021. So I'm hoping to see a bit more of an attacking team. Hang on, I'm not, because I want Canada to do well. So I'm not really hoping to see that. But in terms of Morocco, hoping to see a bit more of an attacking team. Okay, just a quick look at players to watch. Of course, Achraf Hakimi is player to keep an eye on. He takes free kicks. He's a left defender, but he's a real leader on the team. He plays free kicks. He is kind of involved in the attack. He has 8 goals, and he plays for Paris Saint-Germain. The forwards, I think all 3 of them will be visible in the World Cup. So Ayoub El Kabi, probably the main forward there, and Youssef En-Nesyri and Tariq Tissoudali. The forwards, they'll be kind of responsible for scoring the goals. And then a few veterans, Yassine Bounou, the goalkeeper, will almost certainly be starting. And Romain Saiss, the captain, look for him coming up for corner kicks, as well as being a rock in the defense there. Sofiane Boufal, I think he will be a bit of a playmaker on the left side, even though he's called an attacking midfielder. And then just this player, Abdi Ezalzouli. So Morocco were hoping to get him. They put him on the preliminary roster for the 2021 African Cup, kind of more in hope than in fact. He seems like he's still deciding between Morocco and Spain. But, maybe this being a World Cup will help him make a decision. And of course, Morocco will be hoping that he falls their way. All right, well, that brings us to the end of the podcast on Morocco. I just want to have the list of players at the very end here, so I'm going to copy them in, but I won't go through them all. I won't go through them all again. No, actually, what we did last time was kind of our starting lineup, so maybe I'll kind of do that on the fly here. I'm gonna wing it and try to do this. So starting lineup. So the manager will be not Vahid Halilhodžić, but will be Walid Regragui. And I hope in the future they look towards a manager whose name is easier to pronounce. For goalkeepers, I'm going to say it's definitely Yassine Bounou. Munir Mohand is the backup now. For central defenders, it's going to be Romain Saiss and Naif Eguerd. I shouldn't say it so confidently. They could get injured or something like that, but the standard starting lineup will be those 2. As a left back, again, if fit, definitely Achraf Hakimi. But on the right back, I wonder if Adam Massini will be challenged. And so I'm going to leave Soufiane Alakoutch and Noussair Mazraoui as possible candidates there to replace Nabil Dirar, who is retired and had the position before that. Midfielders, at the back, they really don't have any defensive midfielders. So I'm just going to kind of show that position is not really being filled. But central midfielders, Sofiane Amrabat, and although he plays a bit more on the wing, it seems, Azzedine Ounahi, but I'm going to put him as likely. there, and I may be wrong in doing that. And we'll say goodbye to the retired Mbark Boussoufa, who is a bit of a loss in the midfield there. Left midfielders, they may turn to a couple of these guys, Amin Harit or Mohamed Chibi. It seems right now they're just kind of trying them out. And one of the things they're doing is replacing right midfielder Nordin Amrabat, who they still haven't found an actual right midfielder for. Left wingers, we only have possible candidates here, Zakaria Abukal and Soufiane Rahimi. I wonder if Rahimi is a bit more favored there. But I'm going to leave up the young player with Barcelona, Abdi Ezalzouli. And I'm also going to leave up the possible right winger, Hakim Ziyech, because they'll definitely use him if he joins the team again. As far as attacking midfielders go, we'll say Salim Amala, although he's been playing more in the central midfielder, though perhaps in a attacking role. I'm going to leave Sofiane Boufal up there too as a likely candidate. And in the forward line, Ayoub El Kabi and Youssef En-Nesyri are pretty much definite as far as selection for the team go. And Toussoudali is probably the same, but I leave him as a likely because I think he's kind of the third in that equation, and also likely is Munir El Haddadi, although they have used him kind of on the wing more than as an actual forward. Okay, so we'll call that our prediction for the starting lineup at this point, with a few players kind of as maybes in there. All right, well, that brings us to the end of the podcast, and thank you so much for listening. And we will be doing an update in probably early November when they publish the preliminary squads, and we might wait until they finalize that squad. Meanwhile, we did do actually African teams, and we have done CONCACAF teams, so North and Central American teams. If you want to look back, of course, we're going to do podcasts for this World Cup, which will update those, but they are in prior podcasts. So if you look at the show notes for this, or if you check us out at soccerphiles.captivate.fm, I'll put it up on the screen for those who want to check YouTube. Again, you can check YouTube and just pop directly to the end and see this information in print. Or you can just search Soccer Files Canada. So Soccer Files is with a PH in the middle and an S at the end. And if you find our website, you'll be able to see the stuff we've done until now. 9 series in all. This is our 10th. And I'm going to say goodbye. So bye, and we hope we see you in our next podcast.